Welcome, witches, wizards, and muggles alike, to another enchanting episode of Magical Tales from the Slytherin Common Room, bringing your favorite Harry Potter fanfiction to audio format. So sit back, relax, and Accio headphones, and let the magic begin. Apostasy by Deydralinne, Chapter 13, A Conflict Resolved Quickly. Her feet pounded down the hallway toward the office in the back corner of the building. She could hear the others behind her. A witch named Tanya scrambled into the hall in front of her, her blue eyes blue wide under the black, wavy hair. She made no effort to draw her wand, no effort to move. She just stayed frozen in her spot. "Bitch, move!" Hermione waved her arm with her wand in its holster, and Tanya went flying through the air, crashing with a thump into the painting on the wall. The screams around the house were overwhelming. Directly opposite the dining hall was Kingsley's office. Between them, on the wall, was door number 2, the exit into the backyard. They weren't the only ones to arrive at the corridor in the junction. Kingsley skidded to a halt in the archway into the dining hall. His dark brown eyes locked with hers. Hermione tutted and waved her index finger at him. She carefully stepped forward, placing her back at the office, and Kingsley's eyes narrowed at her. "Expelliarmus!" Hermione giggled when, instead of disarming her, his own wand flew out of his hand. She watched as the horror followed by realization passed over his face. Kingsley stood a little straighter in defiance. "So you have been a bad boy after all, Kings." He glared her down. "And you've been a traitorous bitch." Hermione shrugged, a smirk forming beneath her mask. "Yeah, well, I have a very specific skill set, and it's about time someone appreciates it. I don't really care who I use it for, or on, as long as I achieve my goals, that is." "Do you really think that he is going to appreciate you, Hermione?" Hermione chuckled at the use of her first name. He hadn't called her that in years. He must be feeling desperate to protect whatever was in the office behind her. She smiled knowingly, not that he could see it. "Secure the office," she said, her eyes not leaving the man who had been her superior all those years. Behind her, Theo moved to follow her direction, and Kingsley began to look panicked. Pansy flanked her, waiting to see how their continued interaction would play out. "Hermione, please, you don't want to do this. You don't want to join them. They want you dead, remember?" Hermione hummed in amusement. On more than one occasion, she had thought the Order felt the same way. Their obvious disdain for her and Ginny had never been hidden. His attempts to persuade her were pathetic at best. He wasn't even trying, not really. She could see his brain turning, trying to figure out a plan of escape. "How much of yourself did you give up in the Order to beat them? You know this isn't right. You know that it's not where you belong." Hermione sighed, tilting her head and looking straight into his near black eyes. "I'm bored now," she said, stepping toward him. Kingsley, stepping back with each of her steps forward. His legs were longer than hers. He was putting more distance between them than she was making. Hermione jumped and gripped her fingertips into the wood of the wooden doorframe, swinging with enough momentum to close the space and knock him in the chest with her boots, sending him flying backwards. Kingsley's frame crashed into one of the benches, stunning him momentarily before his figure loomed over her again. Preparing for hand-to-hand combat, Hermione snorted. She had no interest in wasting her time sparring. She had no intention to kill the man either, at least not yet. She had wanted to know what he was keeping hidden first so that she could make his death suited to his crimes. "Who else is in on your dirty little secret?" Hermione asked, stepping forward slowly. Kingsley snarled. "I don't know what you're talking about." Hermione chuckled. "Are you sure about that?" Kingsley stood firm. His eyes hardened on her. Hermione cocked an eyebrow, her wand finding its way to her fingertips. She relished in fear that flooded the gentleman's eyes. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "You don't want to do this, Hermione. I know you don't." She clicked her tongue at him. She was done entertaining this conversation. Obliviate. It clearly wasn't the spell he had anticipated, because her brow furrowed in shock before his mind went blank. "Pansy, put a tracker on him," Hermione muttered. "I want to know exactly where he heads next." He wouldn't forget everything, of course. She didn't want him to be useless, but she did remove their interaction, the memory that she had turned on them. It wouldn't take them long to figure it out, but whatever time she could get, she would take. She turned and headed back to the office, Theo finishing up the last of the new wards that were spreading like a virus, eroding the existing ones created by the Order. "No one but our team, you and Red, can enter," Theo explained, a thrilled grin spreading across his cheeks. "Though I do hope someone tries. I haven't had a chance to test my new ward out yet. It's supposed to make their blood boil from the inside." Hermione's eyes went wide with impressed shock. From her place in the doorframe until the groan of Tanya regaining consciousness from down the hall drew her attention. It was a short march to grab the witch by the hair. She didn't particularly care either way for the girl, and her curiosity was piqued. Hermione all but threw her through the doorway, and instantly the girl began to cry out in pain. Pansy made her way back to the doorway, where Hermione looked on in fascination. "Jesus, Granger, that was brutal even for you," she uttered. Hermione shrugged with her arms folding across her chest. Tanya's screams growing louder and louder as she writhed on the floor uncontrollably. Interestingly, Hermione felt nothing as she looked on at the witch. No remorse, no guilt. Humanity had long since left her, and even if it hadn't, why should she care about those who had never cared for her? I was curious. The witch, who had grown desperate, suddenly stilled, her eyes wide and bleeding but lifeless. "Are you able to slow it down a fraction?" Hermione asked. Theo huffed a laugh. "You definitely belong with us." "If we're done here, we should meet in the foyer to do our sweeps," Pansy drawled. Hermione waved her on for her to lead the way. Chaos still seemed to be running loudly through the house as the participants desperately tried to find their way out. Shattering glass was merely a background track as people attempted any way they could to get out of the house and beyond the wards. Hermione leaned against the fireplace, her eyes roaming around the room. I have to admit, there was definitely something suspicious about the way Hermione watched as Elizabeth ran down the stairs in the mirror at the edge of the room. From where Hermione stood, she could see up the stairs in the foyer, and Elizabeth was so preoccupied with checking over her shoulder that none of the Death Eaters were following her that she wasn't looking around for the danger. She shouldn't be surprised. Elizabeth was a gardener, not a fighter after all. 2 seconds, please," Hermione muttered to Pansy. Grabbing the metal poker from its spot against the fireplace, she stalked forward. Elizabeth ran around the corner, and Hermione swung it straight into her cheekbone with such a force that the girl flew sideways into the frame of the archway into the sitting room. The hit to her head knocked her out, and she fell backward onto the ground. "Not nice, is it, you fucking cunt?" Hermione hissed at her before throwing the poker down onto the girl's stomach. She strained her shoulders and turned back to face Pansy, whose eyebrows were raised, an amused grin pulling at her face. "Sorry, you were saying?" Hermione waved her hand for her to carry on. "I was saying that there was definitely something suspicious about the way that Kingsley went straight for his office. He would have had to pass by the third downstairs exit coming from that direction, so he wasn't looking for door number 2, was he?" Pansy theorized. Hermione shook her head. "No, we will know more when everyone has either been rounded up or escaped." "So, are we just not talking about the personal vendetta against that one?" Theo indicated to Elizabeth's unconscious body. "She blindsided me with a crowbar once. Not much to it," Hermione shrugged, just as Ginny and the others trotted down the stairs. "Did you get it?" she asked as soon as her eyes landed on Ginny. Ginny responded with a nod as she glared down at Elizabeth's body. "Yeah, please tell me we're taking that one back with us." Hermione snorted. "Obviously." "Did you secure the office?" Draco frowned, all serious in his commanding officer tone. Something about it just made Hermione want to fuck with him. "Nope, we were too late. Whatever it was, he took it and ran." It was a good thing her mask covered her mouth because there was no hiding her smirk at the outraged look on his face. "Are you serious right now?" his voice bellowed. "Fuck, guys." Pansy and Theo stared back, tight-lipped and wide-eyed. It might have only been a few short days, but these two were already growing on her, and she could tell that if they continued on their trajectory, she and Jen would have a lot of fun causing trouble with them. "She's fucking with you, Dee," Blaise stated. "Seriously, I can sense Theo's words from here." Hermione rolled her eyes. "Buzzkill," she muttered. You? Fucking pain in my ass." Draco swung around and stormed out of the room furiously. "You know, you might kill him yet, Princess. Raise his blood pressure too high or burst an aneurysm or something," Theo exhaled heavily. "Or he will throw her against a wall and fuck her," Ginny added, sounding a little too hopeful. "Ginny," Hermione growled her way. Even beneath her mask, Hermione knew Ginny was grinning at her. "What?" She tried to shrug innocently while Pansy snorted a laugh beside them. Hermione felt the blush rising in her cheeks. "You know damn well what. Who have we managed to capture?" Hermione asked, suddenly turning on her serious persona. Ginny's eyes twinkled back at her knowingly. Blaise shrugged. "Unfortunately, the major players got away. Kingsley apparated before I could stun him." Pansy waved her hand dismissively. Hermione let him go intentionally. "We have a trace on him. We're hoping he will lead us to some of the other safe houses." Blaise frowned. "That's risky." Hermione shook her head. "I obliviated him. He won't even remember it happening. He will just think that he got cut off and escaped before a faithless Death Eater could attack. Kingsley knows the most about the other locations. That's why he never leaves the house. He's always claimed it was too risky. That too much would be compromised." Theo snorted. "Hardly did him any good when you two were in here." Ginny smirked back at him in pride. "Most definitely. He's been trying to get Hermione out of here and into the middle of nowhere for years now. Well, let's find out why, Draco growled as he came back into the living room. Death, Pusey, and Rel are managing the transportation of the prisoners. Hermione sighed. It feels almost anticlimactic. It would have been nice to catch someone myself. You just killed that black-haired chick, put a trace on Kingsley, and captured the crowbar chick. How is that anticlimactic? Pansy snickered. Crowbar chick. Draco's eyes fell to the unconscious body of Elizabeth. Oh, I see. A wave of his wand had ropes shooting towards her and securing her hands and feet. It brought Hermione a certain level of satisfaction watching Elizabeth be levitated out of the room, knowing that she would end up trapped in a prison cell. At what point had she really stopped caring if the order lived or died out? She wasn't entirely sure, but she did know that she probably should have left years ago before the resentment and bitterness had eaten away at the last of her sympathy towards them. Now, it almost felt justified. Are you ready? Draco asked her, with the softness that she wasn't expecting, as if he was expecting this to be hard for her. In reality, she was eager. There had to be a reason for all the madness that went beyond simply her use of the killing curse. Absolutely. She straightened, her heart pounding in her chest as she led the group back down the hall toward Kingsley's office. It was neat in here. While the book sat behind his desk, a soft white light gave the impression that the room was a much more friendly environment than had been her experience. His desk was neat, with a few pieces of parchment sitting on top, beside a bright orange quill and an ink pot, and a small plant was in the opposite corner. This room seemed so normal that it was hard to believe that there was a war going on at all. Draco and Pansy both moved to the shelves and shelves of books, starting at the opposite ends, but Hermione knew better. The books were encouraged to be used by those in the house. Skilled fighters were a commodity, and if anyone could improve, they should. You won't find anything hidden in there. It will be his desk drawer. It's always locked, Ginny announced, waving her mask away. The rest of the group followed suit, and Draco frowned before moving to the aforementioned desk. A tug at the handle confirmed it was locked, but apparently wasn't locked very well because when his Alohomora didn't work, he simply sliced the top of the desk clean off and sent it crashing into the wall. Hermione craned her neck to peer inside. There were several loose papers crammed inside, but that's not what drew her immediate attention. In the corner sat a small blue sphere, a swirl of liquid mist floating within. Well, that will be it. Hermione sighed, knowing they might not receive the answers they were looking for after all, given that prophecies only worked when the person they were about touched them. Draco picked up the papers and started shifting through them with a shake of his head. It's just strategy notes. Some of these look like plans for some kind of invention. Not those. Though they are probably my inventions, but I mean that. She pointed at the prophecy sitting in the corner. Everyone looked in the drawer before looking at her with a series of confused looks. What exactly are you seeing? Blaise questioned. Prophecy? Hermione said slowly, looking at each of them for any signs of recognition. No, just me. You can't glimmer prophecies to hide from the people they're about, Pansy said, looking between the three men in the room. Hermione's mouth fell open. Surely not. Oh, God, Hermione groaned. Please don't let this be another destined to save the world. He can't be killed while she lives and vice versa, because honestly, we did that one already. Hermione snorted and reached for the orb, and the second her fingers touched it, a shimmer fell away from it. A conflict resolved quickly will change the world as we know it. The brightest star leading a nation out of the dark and into the light will be our saving grace. She, most intelligent, will guide us on a path to greatness. Well, shit. Isn't that interesting? She mused to herself, meeting Ginny's eyes with a smirk.